everyone. Welcome. Thank you to those of you who've been hanging out all day just waiting for this panel to start. We appreciate it. So my name is Mary Bishop. I'm a food consultant and writer, and above all else, I am a foodie. Vegan food specifically, but I have enjoyed Detroit cuisine for a long time. It means a lot to me personally and professionally, and it's my honor to be sitting up here with some of the best in Detroit, be it chefs or restaurateurs. So warm welcome to my esteemed colleagues this afternoon. I think probably everybody in this room knows of these chefs, their restaurants for sure, but I'd love to spend just a couple of minutes and have you guys tell a little bit about your personal story, and more specifically, how you landed in Detroit. And Jared, we'll start with you.
I'm Jared Gadlaw. I grew up in Garden City, Michigan. Kind of born and raised here, and went to Michigan State University and studied hospitality business. And after that, I moved to New York City to learn to cook. I figured I'd be there for a couple of years and then come back and open a restaurant and be a great success. But it kind of grabbed me, and I had some great opportunities. And I was there for 15 years, and I think at that point in time, we were ready to kind of make our way back here and open real. So, myself, my wife, and my two kids moved back and opened in September of 2020.
Wonderful. Happy to have you here. Ping?
Hi everyone. So I came to Detroit in 2016 and moved from New York City as well. I was born and bred in Singapore. Came to the US for college and then, got into a career in the music business. So when I think coming here was really kind of a left turn. I quit New York, I quit the music business and sold everything I owned and invested in Detroit. So my first business was the Royce, and it's a wine shop and bar downtown. So really got into food and beverage through that avenue and opened Marrow in 2018. So basically I wrote a business plan and I had a vision for a butcher shop restaurant hybrid because I was really, I love good food growing up in Singapore, and I thought we must have a lot of access to good farm meat because we're in Michigan. So I thought, I would love to have this like classic butcher shop where whole animal breakdown, it happens through butchers. You can get great cuts, unique cuts, fresh meat, locally sourced, small farmer oriented, and yeah, that was how Marrow was born. I met the right chef, I met the right butcher, and made the business plan come to life. And then in 2019, Sarah Welsh, executive chef at Marrow, she and I partnered to open Mink, which is a seafood-centric, small little restaurant in Corktown.
Thank you. So New York's loss is certainly Detroit's gain. You guys couldn't tell already. Mamba?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mamba. I was born and raised in Burundi. I came here in 2015. Joined my wife Nadia, who came before me like almost 3 years. Both live in Freedom House, Detroit. So our kid at the same time. When she came, she was pregnant. We were born in Freedom House, and so I couldn't myself. When I started getting a job, my first work authorization, I get it after 1 year. I couldn't get a job, so I had background in sales and marketing. And then at the same time, there was not any African restaurant around Detroit. This is how I was like, how if we started a restaurant? Growing up, my mom owned the small restaurant. She used to cook the food and then deliver the food to the market. So I grew up like, that was my life after school, before school. And I was like, if you can combine my background that I have in marketing and Nadia, she's an amazing cook, we both can cook, we can start. And this is how we started Baobab Fair. And we've been operating since 2021, but we worked on that business for 3 years before we opened, which was a long journey. And now I'm so proud to call Detroit home. Me and my wife live here, we're safe, and we are so happy.
Thank you. Such a wonderful story, and I think it's so interesting and poignant, the global nature of this panel in and of itself. And I would include myself lucky among them. I used to live in Germany and spend a lot of time in Nicaragua now. I think it's so interesting to see the role that food plays in culture throughout the world. So I'd love to spend just a few moments and hear maybe a reflection from each of you about the global nature of food and yet the local capacity for it to deliver to a community and essentially a community spirit. Mama?
So my mom, by owning a restaurant, I think her goal was not to make money because we grew up in a very, very poor neighborhood. I'm coming from a very, very humble beginning. For her, the main goal was to make sure we have at least food on the table, or all the kids in my neighborhood can eat, because parents couldn't even afford the food. That was her goal. It was not to make money, it was to make sure she can feed her. She would always say, the business of food is amazing because even if someone didn't come to buy, you can feed your kids, right? And then for me, that is just what you just asked. And this food is, you make sure you can feed people, and that is a basic, that's the answer for me.
Thank you. Ping?
Well, yeah, I think food is culture, right? And I mentioned growing up in Singapore, I just had a real affinity with good food, and being able to travel as well has always inspired me. Different cuisines, different cultures, and flavors. So, for example, opening Marrow, one of the inspiration was my grandmother, right? Going to, in Singapore, the wet markets. So as a kid, I would just go with her to go shopping for food a few times a week, and she knew her butcher, she knew her fishmonger, she knew her vegetable seller. So I think that association of knowing where your food comes from is very important. And a lot of cultures, I think, overseas especially, have that more intimate nature, and I think that's why I wanted to open this butcher shop, right? Where you get to know your butcher and who can tell you these are cuts that are fresh today, and it influences what's on your plate at the end of the day.
I find it just kind of amazing that there are, the globalization, it allows us, each one of us kind of have a different approach, a different cuisine, Mamba cooks food from his past. I'm an Irish boy who grew up in the Midwest, cooks Italian food with arguably a French, twist to it. But our ability to kind of, the access we all have via our phones, and everything is so, everybody's so connected now, and we have this ability to kind of reach out and experience different cultures in our own backyard, and I find it I find it to be my responsibility to kind of to carry that authenticity and to do my best to make sure that the food I'm putting and the approach that we are taking to cooking Italian food in my case remains kind of true, even though we're here in the Midwest and our ingredients are a little different, but the mindset I think should continue and be the same, so that we have an opportunity to kind of experience different cuisines just without leaving our backyard.
Yes, and on that point, how would you characterize, if you had to, Detroit cuisine? There's so many influences in this city naturally. Over the last century in particular, drawn in from automotive to some degree. Detroit used to be the fourth largest city in the U.S. No longer the case, but it is a true melting pot. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What makes Detroit cuisine or the Detroit food business unique and nuanced? And Ping, we'll start with you.
Well, I think since over the past few years, I've definitely seen a development in the scene, and I think there's more diversity, and it's a tough one, right? Because it's hard to say it's just Detroit, deep dish, square pizza, right? That's Detroit. I think now, the restaurants I own operate at a slightly higher price point, right? So it's tasting menu driven, It's local ingredients driven. It's what, the local butcher shop. Coriander is a farm that we're supported from day one. So local produce is always featured. Seafood at Mink, which is not local, but again, it's just like as sustainably sourced as we can, right? So I would say it's become, there's a certain maybe Midwestern bent by, I think the strong flavors is one thing I've noticed in Detroit. A lot of chefs love strong flavors. Be it like the flourish of the plate, the sauce, but local ingredients and fresh ingredients dominate. And if anything, I think that is a key trend of, I think a lot of the good restaurants in Detroit. But diverse, and New American is kind of the catch-all phrase. Chef Sarah loves to put kimchi, pickled stuff, as well. So I think it reflects the diversity and increasing cosmopolitan and globalization of flavors.
I think that Detroit cuisine is probably different to different people. I think depending on your demographic, how you grew up, where you live, what your socioeconomic means are, I think that it probably skews, vastly, the scale is probably much bigger than I realized, just having been back for a few years, and the people I know, the chefs, that are kind of chef owners of restaurants of certain, caliber, they all kind of came up in similar, working for this, they worked at Roast, or they worked at, Townhouse, or, they all kind of have this, similar, flavor profile that is, middle, Mediterranean inspired. You get a lot of influences from the Middle East because of a large Arabic population. For me, I don't really feel like I can firmly answer that question. I think it's different for everybody.
I think for me it's this, right? Unity. Unity that the church has created. I can walk in a room, I can see Jared, I can hug him, I can cry, I can laugh. I can meet Ping in Houston, we can hang out all night, we can talk about business. For example, she was helping me with finances, right? So this is the thing, this is for me, the success in this. We have a problem, we try to solve a problem together. You call someone, they're right away, even no matter how busy they are, they're going to respond, they're going to show up. So that is for me. Yesterday we had an amazing event to raise the money for Freedom House. 5 chefs say, hey, let's do that, right? That is for me in Detroit, and then that is what it's making who we are. I think I would say unity, yeah.
Thank you, very poignant, and I think many of us here would agree with those sentiments for sure. Several of you have mentioned either today, in the last couple of minutes, or in our one-on-one dialogues, about the importance of locally sourced ingredients. I know, Jared, this is something that's near and dear to your heart, so I'd like to start with you, and we'll go down the line to really talk about, how that influences your menu, but also what does that truly mean as a chef and a restaurateur, being able to locally source those key ingredients?
Well, with the growing season that we have here in Michigan, obviously it's been a roller coaster of a spring, and it's blatantly apparent how difficult it must be for the group that sat in front of us, before on the panel right before us, how difficult it is to kind of forecast and plan and achieve those goals of being locally sourced, locally, sustainable, and for me, it's obviously it's a topic we all want the best. We want the best in our backyard. We want everything. I wish that it was like California, where you could have a never-ending surplus of fruits and vegetables and variety, but here in Michigan, we have a much shorter growing season. So it's a constantly changing goal of ours to kind of maintain that locally sourced stature, but it's something that we all actively partake in, and there's a lot of kind of local urban farms that are popping up. We're working closely with Featherstone Garden, who just acquired a plot of land, kind of right between, right by the casino, and we're trying to help her get it activated, giving her some early funding, kind of buying in advance so that she can kind of get her feet under her, and will hopefully allow us to kind of work together to say, hey, let's not just grow green beans and jalapenos. Like, there are many different kinds of beans and many different kinds of peppers, and a lot of these things that aren't readily available here in Michigan, and I think a lot of it is just because of exposure, and I think that the good fortune I had to work in New York and open restaurants all around the world and travel like I did for the group that I work for. It's kind of I feel like it's partly my responsibility to help bring some of that experience and that knowledge here, and enable people to see more than what we currently have here.
So locally sourced is very important to the restaurants that I own, but it really is driven by the chefs first and foremost. So Chef Sarah and Chef Cam at Mink, you won't see a tomato on the menu in the winter, right? You won't. It becomes like root vegetable heavy, and even sometimes even if the dish becomes, it transforms the dish, right? But it's just like they stick very much to what they can find, what produce they can find in what season. So like ramp season is very short-lived, but you'll see ramps on the menu. And with meat, it's central to what I'm building at Marrow. So we launched our first USDA line of sausages last week in Plum Market. So Marrow Detroit Provisions is my extension of the meat business. And so I've been really busy working with my team on building a local supply chain over the last year. And it's been a challenge, but it's not like, it's a challenge in that we have certain sourcing standards. We want to stay local, and for us local, obviously is Michigan, but it's also Great Lakes. So we are looking around, as we expand, we're looking to work increasingly with farms in the Great Lakes region. So currently our pig farmer, our beef farmer, they're based in Michigan. So we haven't gone outside of it yet, but it's all about the Great Lakes for us, and it's really truly this supply chain that we're building. It's predicated on local.
The Baba Fair, concept, as you can imagine, is very, very challenging most of the time, because some of them, not only the ingredients, the spices that we use have to come overseas. But the good thing is now we start working with farmers to make sure some of the products or some of the ingredient or spices, we can get them here, which is good. Like, for example, right now we just started with someone who made the very typical eggplant from Burundi, and we started. It's doing well, but unfortunately we cannot get all the eggplant all the time. We don't like you guys that you have to change the menu all the time, so our menu stays. And our clients, when they don't see it, they get mad, right? That's a challenge. But what we've been trying to do when I have events, I will try to bring those to the menu so that people can start doing, or we have special thing for, we can cook the meal also for our staff. That's how we start, but it's still a challenge, big challenge for us to get there. But we are growing, we are there, and then I think Detroit starts opening for these different ethnic restaurants and food. I think we're gonna get there one day.
Yeah, this really opens up the concept of sustainability, and in a traditional sense, environmental sustainability, and certainly local sourcing is a big part of that. Can you guys walk us through how your specific restaurants and/or companies are addressing the other avenues of sustainability? So be it, food and product waste, which we know the restaurants are typically, garnering a large portion of the food waste in the U.S. So how do you guys tackle that on a daily basis? It seems like a huge challenge. Mamba?
So first of all, for me, coming in this country, I couldn't believe the waste of food. For me, it was a shock. Because where I came from, you don't waste food. That is not even an option. And so our welfare have zero waste food. And we use everything because literally we have to make sure that there is no waste. As I'm a Muslim believer, so that is a sin, first of all. So you cannot do that. And then everybody, they know that the first thing you have to make sure that there is no food waste. So honestly, I'm so proud that we don't have the food waste for that part. And again, is to not trying to make sure we tell about everybody our story, where we came from. And we still have cousins, brothers, who still struggle to eat. We say, hey, if you are wasting food or if we are wasting anything, you are hurting me directly. So please don't do that. And then that message people understand. And then I believe it's an education thing. That's when you start telling people, even our own kids, if you're not gonna finish it, don't take it. Because if you open something, you have to eat it and finish it. Even if you don't like it. There's no, I don't like it, I'm not gonna finish it. That doesn't exist. So you have to, if you open it, finish it. Right? And so I think it's more cultural thing, and I think that is where we have to work more by educating people that concept of there is no waste food. This is not even an option. We shouldn't even talk about this.
Yeah, so the butcher shop restaurant hybrid model was also built on this notion that if we can't sell something in the case, the kitchen will cook it, right? So truly, there's very little waste at Marrow for that reason, as well as Sarah has this saying, trash to cash, turning trash into cash. So she's very good at repurposing byproducts or ingredients that may not move in certain ways into something else. So like we also do a lot of bone broth, right, from the bones that the butchers break down. So that because of our business model, it actually facilitates a lot of extra usage. And and trash to cash is a brilliant way of generating more income, more sales as well.
Yeah, trash to cash, you heard it here first. That's one of the, I'm certain, quotes coming out of today. Thank you, Chef Sarah, for that. Jerry?
For me, waste is, a lost opportunity. I think it's, as a good business practice, you don't want to have waste. You don't want, to be over ordering, and it takes, for us in particular, we have chefs in the kitchen that, are capable of turning trash into cash. And a lot of, I think this restaurant scenario, which, where there's a lot of waste, and maybe it's in a different place where there's a kitchen manager that, doesn't have the bandwidth to, turn something into cash and make a profit out of it. And being in Detroit, it's, being in this business, there's not a whole lot of room for error. So you really, you can't afford to burn, a couple $100 worth of product or throw it away or whatever. So, that aspect of it should just be inherent in all of our businesses, but beyond that, recycling and composting, and there's a lot of other layers to it that I wish were a requirement of all of us in every industry. Everybody should have a recycling bin out there. Everybody should have a compost bin, in the back, and I see it more and more, and it is, but it's a cost. It's something that businesses have to foot, and it doesn't make them any money. So you have to, be a tree hugger, or like myself, I just want, waste is a problem that is very, near and dear to my heart, and we do everything we can to limit that waste.
It's wonderful to hear. It really does take all of us doing at least a little bit every day in order to really kind of impact for the greater good. When we talk about sustainability, I think a lot of people naturally think of, composting and food waste, right? But there's also a larger question, specifically within the restaurant industry, about human capital and equity within the front of house staff and the back of house staff. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that specifically as it relates to sustainability, and how do you guys kind of keep your human capital, which is arguably so critical to the success of a restaurant. How do you keep that top of mind along with the host of other things that you're balancing within, your specific restaurant space? And Jeremy, we'll start with you.
So I have been a kitchen staff my entire life. I studied to it. I've never, I worked in a car dealership with my father when I was growing up, but besides that, I worked in the kitchen for 24 years. So, it is certainly something that's, this income disparity, front of house, back of house, it is a problem, but there's no good solution, so there's, now as an owner, I have the opportunity to change, to break the mold, to bend the mold, to make adjustments to this mold that has been in existence for, as long as there's been restaurants, tip restaurants at least. But it's still a problem, and I don't have answers to it. I watch, Pete, she's got, salaried back of house employees, Danny Myers, and people have tried this, auto grad system, and generally, it's failed because guests don't want to pay more money for the product, and it's a challenge no matter what. So for me, I do my best on the pay side, but I also have spent 4 years working in the best restaurants that I could possibly be in, and building myself up to a point where I have more than cash to offer, where I'm offering knowledge and life experience and the ability to create and go through processes that will allow them to take that next jump, because you go from being a cook where you make whatever 18, 20, 25 bucks an hour to being a sous chef where you can make 60, 70, 80 $1,000 a year, and then to being a chef. So if you're like any industry, you kind of have to work your way through it. So for me, it's finding that balance of providing people an opportunity to make enough money to enjoy their life. They work my team works on a 4-day work week, so they have a good work-life balance. And then in addition, giving them opportunities to learn how to be the next, how to take that next step, how to be a chef, how to create, how to, adjust, how to learn on someone else's dime, my dime, how to make mistakes on someone else's dime, because all these are very important things to, succeed in this industry.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, or it's a very important thing, looking at payroll costs and payroll models in our industry. I think we've come a long way in terms of being an equitable or sustainable model. I think in the past, restaurants have been criticized a lot, right, for very unbalanced lives and all that. I think things have changed, and at my restaurants we have 4-day work week, 40 hours a week, and back of house is all salary, which creates additional pressure if sales are down, right? But we do that by design because we really believe in retaining the same staff and giving them, basic stable salaries, right? But to be honest, it's a model that can be hard to sustain. During slow quarters, right? I was just telling, we were just talking about that actually before the panel. So we are also acutely aware, and we watch the front of house, models. People have moved away from tips. We've gone towards a service charge model, which really we started during COVID to ensure that our front of house staff was maintain their take home, their effective hourly, and we've kept it. So it has worked, and we tell our guests you don't have to tip on top of this 20%, but some people still do. So it really ensures a very healthy salary for the front of house.
So staffing for us was starting the restaurant. We started in the middle of the pandemic, and we made a big mistake to hire people who has experience. That was the worst mistake to make. And yeah, after a couple days, couple weeks, everybody left, you know, and we realized like, okay, how about if we hire people who doesn't have experience so we can grow together? We did that, especially when our goal, and then we have, I would say, 55 of our staff now are coming from Freedom House, which helped us a lot because we understand each other, there's no culture shock, so we can, and we share with them, this is how much we make, and this is how much we pay you. So very transparency to tell them, hey, if you come in here, this is how much our menu costs, don't expect that you're gonna get this paid. But what we can do, we can show you that, you know, this is how much we pay, this is how much we get. And if you come at our fair, you can still see the same faces for a long time. This doesn't happen in a lot of restaurants, which we are so proud because we communicate with them, we talk with them, and then this is an area that people grow. We don't hire a manager, no, we pick managers from the team. And this gives them the opportunity to see, hey, there is a vision here. If any project that we work on, we bring it to the table, we talk about it, and we move on together. And that's why even expanding for us, it's not expanding just we want to make more businesses, it's expanding so these people can expand, can grow. Because if we have a manager already with one location, next manager, where he's going, so we have to expand so the next manager can have a room. I think that is our strategy and it's working well.
Wonderful. I do have to chuckle at the, don't hire experienced folks. You've heard it here, people. I don't know where you else would hear that, but I love the genuine candor. Thank you for that. And Jared, you mentioned something in Bamba. I think you echoed it in some way, about this concept of, paying it forward and trying to create, the next generation of potential business owners or managers or chefs, and ultimately creating some degree of legacy. Does that weigh on you heavily? We'll start with Jared.
I don't spend too much time worrying about legacy. I mean, I've been instilled with a tremendous work ethic from my days working for my dad at the car dealership. Long hours were never an issue, and so it's allowed me to succeed in this industry that is very, labor intensive and requires, incredible stamina to succeed and to get through, a career. For me, I've always believed that just kind of being an open book and leading by example, and that was kind of enough to, provide inspiration for younger people. I do have a former extern, from my days in Maria that is in the audience as well, and he's about to open his own restaurant in the next week or so. So, it works. You put the time. You don't worry about the details along the way, the milestones along the way, and if there's a legacy, then it should be to build. Then it comes and it happens. And it happens naturally. And that's kind of the goal, just to be an open book and lead by example, and allow people to have access to anything that's in my head, or any tools, food products, whatever it might be. Provide this knowledge so that there is the next generation. People do have the ability to go on and learn, and maybe it sparks an idea and inspires them to move to a different city and follow a similar path to the path that I follow.
I think it's interesting and notable, just the hard work, just the work ethic involved in creating not only a restaurant, but a successful, viable business is painstaking. And I can't help but ask about, the differences between the generations, and specifically the millennials. Do we feel like, the capacity to put in that hard work is maintained, in this next generation, or will we see a paradigm shift and they will be bringing other assets to the table? And I apologize to all you millennials in here. I'm old and I'd likely know the answer to this question. And I won't let anyone pick up that volleyball that I just tossed out there. No one wants to answer the question. It's fair.
I feel that's a loaded question, but I look around and I see a whole lot of millennials.
I know, you
so
guys
I
are
think
very
we're
good-looking
safe.
group, very young.
My wife
So,
gets angry when I call her a millennial. She's right on the edge there.
I believe Sarah Welch told me last week, when we talk to the team, don't tell them to work harder. You have to, like, please don't tell my team to work harder. I didn't mean it in that way. I was just like, I think I meant more efficiently, or, I mean, okay, back to the 40-hour work week thing, right? Like, I did not grow up in that culture where, you know, when I worked in corporate job in New York, I didn't count my hours. I just worked whenever. And I had one of those Blackberries, right? Back the old school Blackberry, and my boss would email me on a Sunday, and I would still reply immediately, right? That was my work ethic. So I've had to shift in terms of not expecting my very millennial team to do that. On the day off, on that Monday and Tuesday, don't expect a reply. So I usually wait till Wednesday to contact them if I want something done, right? Because I've gotten used to it. So I mean, I would say it's being in a restaurant business is a tough business because everyone's on their feet all the time, you know, and it may not be a sit behind your computer and answer emails type of job, right? But because it's intense, physically intense, I understand also the importance of maintaining, you know, work-life balance, 40 hours. And then after that, you see efficiency just go down anyway, right? I was thinking about your question on legacy. I think one of the things that I felt really passionate about in building small businesses, even though they're very, very challenging, is being able to give people a good job, right? And more than that, a fun job. Because again, when I was in corporate, and I was also a journalist once, it's miserable, right? I would be like daydreaming, thinking, I'm sorry, Mary.
No offense.
I was a financial news journalist, so not you know what you do, but I would just go like, man, I wish I were a window washer because at least it's an honest job, right? And I was, you know, and in many ways has driven me to become a small business owner as well. Being able to do a job that is fun, that is, I see so much passion. People in the restaurant business, in the wine business, people are great. Like the wine folk are the most fun people to get to know too, right? I mean, everyone's happier. So it's gratifying. Yeah.
No one's surprised by that. I can tell by the audience reaction.
So it's very gratifying to me to be able to provide those kinds of jobs, and it's important that people enjoy what we do, you know.
So I think I can talk about the legacy. Me and Nadia, when we started, you know, the business in the restaurant, we had a lot of pushback. We didn't have anybody that you can look at and we say, hey, we want to be like this person, right? We were trying to solve a lot of problems by ourselves. It was not easy. And the one promise I set myself, I was like, I want to make sure that someone who's coming next will be easy for them, so then I can at least open some doors for that person so it may be easy for them. And then that's what I think me and Nadia are trying to do, is to try to open as many doors as we can, so then somebody else who's coming next, this door can be open to them. A lot of things that we can even see, even on different shelves, in different grocery stores, there is no African product, there is no African food. Why? How many African diaspora we have in this country, right? This is the thing that all Africans or our diaspora we complain about. So I don't like complaining about anything without making actions. Even at the restaurants, our staff, if we have a problem, or you complain about anything, you don't have the answer, just shut up your mouth, don't talk about anything. Bring a solution. If you don't have a solution, keep with you. Yeah, so this is what I try to do, is like, you don't have a solution, make action.
Thank you. I would say that's valuable advice for the restaurant business and also life in general, if I may go so far as to extrapolate your commentary. I'd love to ask you guys one question before we move a little bit more into the economics of the restaurant business. I'd love to ask you, if you were giving advice to your younger self, or you were giving advice to someone who, let's say, maybe recently graduated high school or college and they're looking for direction and they're a foodie and they, kind of want to know like what's next or how to navigate this space, what advice would you give them? Because there may be some sitting in this room right now.
So me growing up, my mom didn't want me to be in the kitchen. She didn't want me to cook. It was like I was forcing that. I was forcing cooking, I was forcing being in the kitchen. I was like, no, go have a degree. And I came to America, my degree was nothing. I went back to cook. And I'm here today because I can cook. I'm here today because of food. So just do both, right? Be flexible. That's what I was saying to myself. And Mama, it's okay, but don't try to stay in one lane, or and then be both at the same time. Be careful of in this country we have a lot of choices, and sometimes people get lost in all those choices. And you spend time in this, you try this, you try this. So know what you want and give it time. Be patient with that. That's what that would be my advice. Yeah.
I have a younger self. I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I bring them to the kitchen often to try to scare them away from working in this industry. But ultimately, you have to do what you love, and I love to cook. And every job comes with challenges, and sometimes the challenge is just boredom, where you're just like staring out the window saying, I'd rather be watching that window than doing what I'm doing. But being in this industry, it's different challenges. It's physical, it's it's emotional, it's just different challenges. So I would just advise anybody that's thinking about it to figure out if it's something you love, and if it is, then put your head down and prepare yourself for a lifetime of pain.
For someone who came in later on I never worked at restaurants when I was younger, and just decided to go full tilt into opening restaurants. I would advise people who are interested, or you think you're interested in it, really talk to as many people, understand the business of running a restaurant, or all the other aspects of it, right? If you're interested in the back of the house, find a mentor, work with chefs, stage, but really understand what's in it, right? I mean, because there's so many moving pieces and there's so many aspects of the business. And you might find that, you may think you're interested in this, but you end up being interested in something else within the restaurant sector, right? But yeah, really think of it as a business and understand it.
Do we have time for a couple more questions, or shall we transition to Q&A?
We can transition, and I think I've got a question that I want to ask, and I've been dying to ask the three of you. Each of you founded restaurants or started restaurants that were unique, that were probably slightly isolated, although both Jared and Mamba, you're kind of close now geographically, but Ping, you definitely, I mean, you were in a neighborhood that was pretty barren, I guess, in a way of saying it. So what do you think would be the impact that food has in building out a culture within a neighborhood? I would really be curious to see if you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think a restaurant helps to anchor a neighborhood in many ways, right? It creates walkability, it creates an option it's a key amenity. I think a lot of neighborhoods I've seen also in other cities have been built around like, oh, this restaurant goes there, and then all of a sudden there are like more restaurants and more condos and more apartments that people are moving into. So we have the ability to gentrify as well in a good way, right? Narrow continues to be in a bit of a destination. We hear that all the time, especially our guests driving in from the suburbs. Sometimes we still get the question, is it safe? Is there parking? Right? But we are drawing people from the suburbs to Detroit. So I think in that way, it's, I feel like we have accomplished something and we've seen change, but to be honest, not enough, right? Like there's still a big empty retail unit across the street from us.
Yeah.
the Parker Duran has seemingly been unable to rent it out, and having another spot in there would help our business. So we've been waiting for 3 years for that to happen. It hasn't happened, right?
And you actually touch upon the topic of density. We talked about this a bit too, right? And how critical that is within a city like Detroit. In other words, Jared, you mentioned also, one restaurant opens, I feel it impacting mine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what impacted all of us the most is COVID and the work from home, movement that is happening around us. So, everybody wants to go out on Friday and Saturday night, and, all the other days are, just a challenge to kind of not lose money. And so, sure, density of people living here, but also density of people just coming down here. It used to be 90,000 people came down to Detroit on a daily basis, for work. And now those numbers, skew from 30 to 40,000 people. And that's maybe on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays when most restaurants are closed. It's something that we hope, Mamba and I, being kind of on the north end there, we hope to see, we hope that we'll anchor, a community. We hope that more businesses will continue to open around us, and the neighborhood will continue to activate in ways that, that we envisioned when we chose these locations. But, in the meantime, we're just gonna kind of do what we do, put our head down and do our best and enjoy the ride.
How many of you in this room would want to open up a restaurant? Good. Great. Do you have some questions that you'd like to ask the panel?
I do.
Please.
It's been a pleasure listening to all of you. So, in thinking about your business, I guess I have a 2 or 3 part question. Number one, the business that you have now, I know some of us have multiple businesses. Was it a first or second generation in terms of was there previously a kitchen there? And I'm really interested in learning about if it is a first generation, you had nothing there, you had to build it out fully. What were some of your greater costs or unforeseen costs in building out your space? That's always an issue.
Yeah, I think it depends on the kind of restaurant you want to build, right? If you want to build a restaurant like Jared's restaurant, it's going to cost you a lot. If you want to build like Barber Fair, it's less than what Jared did. And for the good example for us, we came with zero, nothing, no credit score, never did business before. Everything was new. You can imagine the challenges. But we are lucky to be in Detroit because there is a lot of great programs around, Tech Town, Prosperous, and those are, Business Institute. There is a lot of, great organization that can help you to go through that and to give you the expertise, what you want to bring, what is your business plan, what is your target market, which location you want to be in, what is your space, the square feet, the size of your space. There's a lot of things going, but it depends what you want to do, and those experts can help you. And the good thing, they can connect with the businesses, so we can, if you have any question about my business, we can talk, I can tell you more, and maybe that can help you to go from there. But I would encourage you to, and then again, my experience is not just business, it's this network, it's these people, because you have a lot of questions that come along, and this is people who want to help you to connect with someone to connect to someone. That's what I say, there is a unity in Detroit that you have to take advantage of.
Yeah, it's capital intensive, right, to open a restaurant. So, like Mom and I were talking about financing options and structuring deals. Like, if you're going to raise money, how do you structure a deal? That's one, So you have to consider where your financing comes from. And Detroit has resources like grants and programs and CDFI loans, for example, right? But in designing the restaurant, yeah, I would say be as conservative as possible, but always expect that the budget will be exceeded, right? So definitely have a contingency and know what restaurant you're building and make sure that the equipment is suitable, right? and hire a restaurant designer. That would be my recommendations for the kitchen, for the layout. So at least that, you know, where each equipment is placed based on your menu and your needs of the restaurant. And construction always takes longer, as mentioned, and these days in particular, I saw Dan Carmody, but I'm working on building out a facility in Eastern Market, and its construction costs have just skyrocketed through the roof, right? Inflation's real. I mean, things have come down a little bit, but our project has been delayed because the budget keeps shifting, and we're trying to get it below. So it's the upfront planning is so important, right? And so, yeah, I would say, and make sure that if it's a rented space, always negotiate with the landlord for a period of time where you don't have to pay rent, because you are building up, and so 8 months would be great, right? Just to say, but this 6 to 8 months would be a sweet spot to have.
Yeah, what I can add for that one, for example, for Baba Fair, we were so lucky, and then this was even before COVID, so we had a deal with DDF and Invest Detroit, where we would have to start paying the rent after 1 year of operation. And that for us was a big push. I don't see how we could do that without that kind of deals, right? So, and this is the thing that you want to get from people who went through those programs. And then I promise, like, Detroit has amazing, in this food industry, everybody's willing to help, yeah.